Hi, welcome to The Conversation. My name is Brendan Malone, and in this episode I want to talk about cancel culture, and in particular why I think it is becoming more and more pernicious. As you can see from the view behind me, I am not in my usual location today for this episode of The Conversation. I'm in a really beautiful spot in New Zealand called Akaroa, and the reason I'm here in Akaroa is because I'm a parent helper on my daughter's school camp / field trip. So I thought I'd take an opportunity during one of the breaks to come and film this week's episode of The Conversation while I've got something a bit more interesting in the background. So you'll have to forgive the animal noises, the boats and other things that you'll probably hear. It is what it is. Today's episode I want to talk about cancel culture, and in particular why I think it's becoming more and more pernicious. Now, cancel culture is not really a new thing. We've seen other examples throughout history of this where people have been cancelled, people have been denied employment, people have been punished for the views they hold, for not holding the right ideologies that those who, I guess, wield the strings of power, who hold the strings of power, actually deem to be appropriate and acceptable. Now, what's happening now, though, I think with modern cancel culture is that it's becoming more and more pernicious. The latest victim of this cancel culture, of course, is Gina Carano, who was fired last week from the Star Wars series The Mandalorian. She was fired for tweets that she had, or things that she'd posted on social media. Here's my take on that particular issue. I don't think that what she did was a sackable offence. I think in a sane world, normal human beings who are humane and who are mature would just have a conversation about what she tweeted if they disagreed with her. That's it. There was nothing that she tweeted out, that she posted on social media that I think warranted this sacking. But here's the other thing. I think ultimately Gina Carano may have lost this battle, but I think she's actually won the war. She has found herself, I think, and she has found a level of popular support that I think really bodes more well for her than it does for Lucasfilm, for Disney, who have sacked her, who have, I think, failed to act like rational adults who are open to dialogue and disagreement between people, which is, by the way, what normal, humane civil societies are supposed to tolerate. That's the bare minimum. Disagreement, dissent. That's how it should work. And if you've got a problem with someone, unless they're breaking the law or inciting people to violence or to do harm to other people, then you should just be an adult about it and have a conversation. That's how it should work. But here's the thing. Why is this cancel culture becoming more pernicious? Well, there's two things. Number one is because we now communicate with people more and more online and via social media. And what happens online and via social media is that you don't actually see a person unless you're looking at video footage like you are right now, or maybe a live stream or a filmed interview. And so you don't see the person, all you see is pixels. You see text on a screen, and we know that text on a screen is notorious for us reading into the text. We read into it what the intent is, what the person's motivation is, what they really mean, how they were saying it, what the tone of their voice was, because we don't actually get to hear or gauge any of that stuff the normal way, which is by looking in someone's face and hearing their voice. And so we insert meaning, our own meaning and our own context into the text that often isn't there, and it just drives things even sort of further. It drives us further apart. You don't really connect with a person, you're just connecting with pixels that you're interpreting how you think the person meant it, regardless of whether they meant it that way or not. I think also on top of that is because we don't actually see the person, we just see their text, we can't actually form a meaningful, empathetic connection with them. Normally, if you're face-to-face with a person and you're having a conversation with them and you say something and they start crying, you know you've probably gone too far. You know that you've triggered something in them, and so therefore you would probably, unless you're a psychopath, you're going to adjust your conversation accordingly, or you're going to perhaps put your arm around them, say it's okay, or what's wrong. You're actually going to connect with them in a genuinely sort of empathetic way. Well, you don't do that online because you don't see the person. That's why we have something called the online disinhibition effect. As the name suggests, your inhibitions go right out the window. You treat people in ways that you would never treat them if you were in a real room with them, if you were face-to-face with them, because the empathy mechanisms in your brain don't function as they should when all you are looking at is text instead of an actual human being. But there's another reason why I think cancel culture is becoming more and more pernicious, and it's not just the hostility of social media or text-based communications that drives us further apart and prevents us from forming authentic and meaningful friendships. I think the other reason is because we have a lot of moral cowardice out there at the moment. Now, again, this is nothing new. plenty of other moments in history where we've seen moral cowardice and the disastrous effects of that, the good people who say nothing and allow evil to thrive. But it seems to me more and more there's just too many of us who don't want to speak up, who don't want to actually make our voices heard and say, hey, that isn't a good thing, that person being cancelled, that person being denied employment, that's not a good thing. And I don't think this is because all of a sudden the majority agree with this extremely hostile sort of ideology that some are calling woke culture. I think ultimately it's because in actual fact, generally most of us, we sort of want to go along to get along. We don't want to rock the boat because we're afraid of what will happen to us if we rock the boat. I think, though, we need to rediscover that courage. We all need to actually start rocking more boats. We actually need to be unafraid. We need to have the courage just to stand up and say, hey, that isn't good enough. That person shouldn't be sacked. Because here's the simple truth of it. If enough of us stood up and pushed back against cancel culture, then it wouldn't be able to thrive in the way that it does. It really relies on our silence. Our silence is like a growth factor for cancel culture. It allows it to thrive. It's like a veil of darkness that sort of descends on things and allows it to really thrive and for awful things to happen under the cover of that darkness. I think we really desperately need to recover that courage just to speak up, to not be afraid, and we shouldn't be apologetic for that. We might not agree with the views that someone has espoused, but unless, as I said, that person is doing something criminal with their speech or they're inciting people to actual violence, genuine violence and harm, not the woke definition of violence, which is, well, they said some words and I think words and speech are violence. No, they're not, but actual physical violence and harm, inciting people to commit criminal acts and do things like that, then I think that we should actually speak up. And we should say, hold on, this is actually going too far. What we need is a culture of dialogue, a culture of friendship. And a big factor I think that's going to contribute to that is us discovering genuine, meaningful connection with other people offline. Because there we can actually connect with people and we can put aside politics and we can start with friendship, and then from there have the discussion about the bigger, more meaningful and more controversial things that we experience in this life. Thanks for watching this episode of The Conversation. If you enjoyed it, then please make sure that you subscribe wherever you are watching this. Don't forget to give the video a like, give it a thumbs up, and share it. That really, really helps the channel. If you're not already someone who is contributing to the work of Left Foot Media, you can do that at patreon.com/Left Foot Media. For as little as $1 a month, that's all it takes to ensure that more of this content keeps getting made. And a huge thank you to everyone who is already supporting the channel. Thanks to you, today's episode was possible. I'll see you next time on The Conversation.